along with Mexico, are made by and large by, Africans and their ability to be resilient, both physically and mentally. But, sorry for that tangent. What I will say is that we're bargaining contracts that not only provide smaller class size pay and benefits, they also provide our students with the common good things that they need. Housing. Our students do need that. When they tore down public housing in the city, which, again, by the way, that was done by Rahm Emanuel. He was the chair of the Chicago Housing Authority when they ameliorated all of the public housing. They made the decision to ameliorate all the public housing in the city. And so then he closes 50 schools. So our work is not just to push back on Donald Trump. It is to demonstrate the muscle that we built calling truth to power against Democrats. Listen, the sanctuary that people need now was the same sanctuary we needed against Rahm Emanuel when he was closing schools. Just this past week, 7 charter schools were saved from closure, and they were predominantly Latino schools, or are predominantly Latino schools. Back in 2013, it was Black mothers, not Latina mothers, who were protesting against school closings. When I tell you, if you listen to Black women the first time, there won't be a second time. But my point is,
say that again.
When you listen to us the first time, it won't be a second time.
Wow.
And so I say that to say we have built a muscle resisting privatization and the marginalization of the public good. Donald Trump comes to Chicago and he goes into, he sends his federal agents around Chicago to try and round people up. And what they find is that there are people who know their rights here already.
Amen.
People who have very strong organizing communities, that they have built trust and capacity with each other. So it was very hard to penetrate this city in that terrible way. And that is because we've been practicing keeping ourselves alive under, corporate Democrats, neoliberal Democrats for a long time. So, yes, we're in the eye of the storm, and we've been in the eye of the storm. They don't have to ban books in Chicago. They just make sure that we don't have libraries in our schools. Only 12 of our high schools in this city have them. Only 20% of our schools in total have school libraries. And
my goodness.
We're guessing right. The vast majority.
Wait, President. Wait a minute, President. Wait, just a minute. I got to put a finger in this point that you're just. Can you repeat what you just said about the libraries in the high schools in Chicago? They don't have the high schools don't have libraries. 20% of them have them. Is that correct?
Only 12 of our high schools. Only 12 of our high schools have them. 80% of our schools, 80, do not have operational librarian staff with librarians. 80%. And so, you get all of this.
So how do the kids get the books? How do the kids get the books and the programs?
That is,
it generally comes in the libraries.
Because it's not operationalized. Look, they have the Chicago Public Schools under mayoral control. Our curriculum has been narrowed to get our students ready to take high-stakes tests. The curriculum is not expansive and joyful. Young people are not reading the classics. Young people are not discussing climactic points in literature. We are not providing those types of experiences across the board because the test and the test score has become the thing to focus on. And if those things are your objectives, You don't need a physical education teacher. You don't need an art teacher. You don't need a music teacher. You don't need a choir or orchestra or a band. All of these things we're bargaining for right now with the school district to put inside of our schools because the school day has been pared down so terribly, kids don't have fun. And listen, as a parent of 3, if my children do not have activities and engagement that they appreciate and like, then I'm going to have a hard time in my household. That doesn't change at the schoolhouse.
Yes, that's amazing.
For the pupil personnel workers too, you don't have the social workers in the schools either.
Well, that was what we won in 2019. So we have one. So we do have a social worker for every school. We're staffed for that. We're working on getting those staffed in a way in which they have more engagement with our students. Same thing for nurses. Listen, our school district was already robbed of, the bare mechanics of it because of the segregation in the city. So if you're north of Roosevelt, chances are you do have a library. Chances are you do have physical education. Chances are you do have art and music, choir, and maybe even instrumental music, a well-funded sports program. But chances of that happening south of Roosevelt become less and less because of the segregation. And so how do you account for the segregation at a time when, quote, DEI policies are under attack? Well, we believe that you codify those policies in a contract. We believe that you make sure that Black school children, white school children, Latinx school children, all school children get to be educated by a Black teacher. We're also doing that. Chicago Public Schools, prior to Rahm Emanuel, we had about 40% of Black teachers, right? Now we're down to about 19%. What does that mean? It means that privatization eroded Black teachers. And it wasn't just here in Chicago either. I mentioned New Orleans because every Black teacher who had a job down there, they lost their job. And that school system was anchored by Black educators.
And you should know that I helped to sue the New Orleans over what they did to the students, that privatization. And so that's another subject that we could absolutely talk about. And I'm so glad you've been talking about these corporatist Democrats. That's why we're in the mess we're in, people. When you're hollering about why isn't there more pushback, it's because of this corporatist, Democratic, Democrats, viewpoint. We got to change that if we're going to really have opposition to what's happening with this Trump administration and their attempt to impose oligarchical fascism on all of us. No. So I do have another question for you, and that is today we understand March 4th is a national day of action to protect our kids, settle our contract. And we know CTU is building a force field, I love that word, a force field around Chicago students to protect them from Trump's attacks and lift up how educators are using their labor power to benefit Black, Latino, and broader school communities. Please tell our audience more about this National Day of Action.
So everywhere in this country, every school district in this country, there are, educators who are trying to figure out how to provide a quality, equitable, and just education to the young people that sit before them every day. It was already hard. Donald Trump has made it seismically worse. How does he make it seismically worse? Well, he spreads disinformation, misinformation, and he makes everything so unclear and muddy. He sows seeds of division and separation. We believe that if he is able to dissolve the Department of Education, then what he dissolves are the protections that Black children need. Giving you an example of Chicago again, when Arnie Duncan was in charge of Chicago public schools, we were suspending Black kindergartners. The district was suspending Black kindergarten. And so the Department of Education and Civil Rights space had to come to Chicago and say, you can't do that. That's
right.
helpful, especially when, at the time, parents were not being heard. Families were being, put on the back burner. So those things were helpful. What's also helpful is that the Department of Education is able to provide Title I funding. Title I funding helps us create a more just space, especially for spaces that are low income and have been deprived of funding. We have special education students where there's an entire code of law that governs how they are supposed to be educated, and it can get very precise based on the abuses that have been documented over time. What does that mean? Those laws and the enforcement of them become very precarious under a Donald Trump regime. And perhaps the biggest thing is if they do a national school voucher bill, because what that does is that it defunds our public school system, and it gives the ability of families to go to private schools, which is fine if that's what you choose to do. But by making it a national voucher bill, what it does do is that it also gives private schools the opportunity to pick and choose what and how they want to teach. And by doing that, you marginalize the type of understanding of the world, society, and humanity that public schools can provide, and provides the opportunity for our young people to learn. We don't want to become Florida, where Zora Neale Hurston, a Florida native, where her books are banned, where Toni Morrison is banned. You have Black churches opening their doors on the weekend for professors and teachers to provide Black history lessons because the school districts are not doing it anymore. It is what has happened in Florida that we know we have to push up against. Project 2025 has bullet points, right? There's no secret to what is happening to us. They want to defund the public good, and by defunding the public good, you erode society. And when it happens in education, then we no longer agree on facts. Facts become opinion, and when facts become opinion, we're in trouble. And right now, paying attention to what's happening in our dystopian world in this moment, facts have become opinion. It is a fact that Black people liberated themselves. It is a fact that the Emancipation Proclamation codified their general strike, if you will, a strike that broke the backs of the Confederacy. But if Donald Trump gets his opportunity to dismantle public education, people won't learn that. People won't learn the resilience and the power of our Black forefathers. You could make a good case, like W.E.B. Du Bois has already made, that if it wasn't for those enslaved Africans leaving those plantations, that we would have two nations right now. We wouldn't have the United States of America. So the true patriots are the enslaved Africans who left the plantation, joined the Northern Army, right, and helped win back the reunification of this country. But those are things that are only taught if you're teaching the truth.
Wow. And truth teaching is everything. You are amazing. We must have you back. Please say you'll come back and be on our show. We got to keep talking about what's going on in the educational system. I hope our listeners throughout this nation and internationally have learned a lot today.